Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Leadership Energy Journey. Well, if leadership is a journey, then this is the map. Okay, that might be a bit of an exaggeration. Right? Let's just say that if leadership is a journey, then this is a map. Okay, we'll be talking about how can we visualize the path of leaders so that it will allow us to see where they are, where we are, and perhaps even what we can do about it. Being your journey guide today, please allow me a moment to introduce myself. My name is Thun Thamrongnawasawat. Yes, I am Thai. That explains the long and difficult to pronounce names. Having lived in KL for the past 4 years though, I've learned that I could make people's lives a lot easier if I just spell my name T-A-N, right? That's a common name in Malaysia and in Asia, in fact. And that's exactly how it's pronounced. So feel free to call me Thun, or as people at the Asia School of Business refers to me as Dr. Thun. A short tidbit about me, I grew up in Thailand, but I spent 16 years abroad in 3 countries, in the UK, in Australia, and the most of which is in the USA. That's the place where I received my degrees in biophysical chemistry. And if that term is new to you, basically just think of biology, physics, and chemistry are kind of rolled into one. And why am I here then talking to you about leadership? Well, as fate would have it, my first job was not one as a scientist, but as a management consultant. So having graduated, I joined the Boston Consulting Group. And I worked out of Bangkok in the Asian region. Right. After several years, I hopped over and worked for an MNC as a business manager. And then I kind of discovered my passion in working with people and helping people to grow and understanding people, which that translated into 15 more years working in leadership and management development. On the way, I put my thoughts together in the form of 4 books. You see some of its covers here, right? And I also got a chance to move out here to work in KL. And also sitting here talking to you. I'm currently the professor of practice at the Asia School of Business, which is an establishment in collaboration with MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the Sloan School in the US. Now, I took the time to tell you a little bit about my background because it does have some linkages to what I want to share with you today. That is the leadership energy journey. Okay. So without further ado, what is this session really about? Yes, it is about a map, right? It's about how we could perhaps visualize our journey as leaders. But how might that be useful? Well, to explain that, let me go back and give credit to one of my key influencers, Dr. John P. Kotter. Many of you may be familiar with this. Right? Dr. Kotter is known as the change guru, right? And for his 8-step leading change process. I've had the privilege of running this program for organizations over the past 8 years, right? And what people found to be useful is having steps to visualize. Okay, it might not apply all the time, right? But generally people appreciate the fact that there is some degree of flow or sequence. Like step 1, right? Everybody knows this, right? Creating the sense of urgency. So when you're running an organizational change efforts, this is sort of where you start, right? Or something like step 7 that you see here, don't let up, okay? And that is a step to remind you, right, before you get to the end, that change isn't just a one-time deal. It's a process. Some may even think it's a culture phenomenon, right? So these guidelines kind of became practical, right? And it translates into actionable items for the organizations, for these so-called change teams, change champions, right? As they took on initiatives, okay? So having been inspired by that, right? In a similar manner, that approach kind of prompted me to look at leadership and trying to, I guess, visualize or practicalize it as well. Now, since working with Kotter on leading change back in Thailand, right? For the past 5 years now that I've lived in KL, I've been working with the Iclif Leadership and Governance Center, which focused exclusively on leadership. Right? Oh, by the way, now it's become the Iclif Executive Education Center within ASB. Right? So what is leadership energy journey? Right, that I described in my latest book in 2018, the cover of which you see here. Analogically, it describes leadership in also what happens to be 8-step process. Right? But I promise you, I did not copy Carter. Right? It just so happened that the flow turns out 8 steps. Right? And you can see some of the key steps here, right? And I superimpose it onto the previous slide on Carter's leading change. But the topic now is about leadership. Right? And you can see some of the steps here going from step 1, start now, right, through step 3, cross the activation barriers, through celebrating success, right, and all the way through the last step, which is what's next. In fact, in the true spirit of it being a map, right, I don't think it does justice by just going point by point on this slide. Right? So I've also translated, or I guess superimposed, these steps into visual as well. So here's what a leadership energy journey actually looks like. Okay. Now, for those who have been familiar with Iclif's work, right, you would know that we don't think leadership as a set of competencies. Right? Leadership doesn't come by having a position or a title, and especially it isn't something that you're born into. Right? Leadership rather is about having that determination, right, and resilience to create a better future. And to do that requires a tremendous amount of human energy, hence the term leadership energy. Right. Then let's go to the visual. Okay, I may look down a bit here so I can see the visual as well. Go to the visual, you can now see the flow of the so-called energy as it travels the path. Right. So for instance, step 1 talks about getting started. Okay. So because leadership is a choice, right? Leadership is something that you have to be sort of cognitively aware. You have to make the choice to embark on the leadership journey. It isn't easy, right? And you have to push your brain and push your body into action. Okay? Now, our brain isn't built to lead. It's actually built to keep us alive. Right? So to a certain degree, to lead is going against the sort of the natural tendency that our brain wants to do. Right? So this first step kind of reminds us to choose that choice towards a better future. Okay, I'm just going to put the annotate there so you can see what I'm talking about as well. Okay, now let's say you go to step 2, discover who you are. Okay, now this is about your values and your purpose. Okay, those of you who are familiar with Iclif's work, you would have kind of been familiar with this concept, this phenomenon already. Right? And much of this work is related or is credited to Iclif's previous books, Too Many Bosses, Too Few Leaders, and Open Source Leadership. And these are amongst many of the publications out there that speak about leading on values and purpose. Right? Now, talking in energy term, right? This is akin to like charging your battery, because leadership energy essentially it's the gap between the current and the future. Right? It's how you see things now vis-a-vis how you want to see things become in the future. And that builds that leadership, that energy potential, so to speak. Right? So it's like when you're charging a battery, you go from a flat battery to a charged battery. What's happening inside when you charge a battery is you're building the potential so that you can release that, if and when the time comes, right? When you're using your phone, for instance. Right? But then, for humans, right, what that means is that you need to reflect and you need to gain clarity on who you are as a person, right? What matters to you, and especially what are you going to do about it? Okay, so that's what we meant by values and purpose. Okay, and then the journey continues in a similar manner. It's kind of drawing relevance back and forth between the science of energy and the art of leadership. In fact, actually, it's kind of like my background, right? Going from science to art, right? All the way to the last step, which is what's next, okay? Right, so, I mean, we don't have enough time today for me to cover everything that's in the 8 steps in detail, right? I'll do my best to kind of try to summarize for you at the end, but trust me, it's probably going to be still a little bit of a blur. So today in this short session, I just wanted to take the opportunity to kind of introduce you to the idea, right? Have you visualize what it looks like, right? And then, hopefully you'll get a chance to explore it in further details when those opportunities arise. Okay. Well, some of you might be sitting there thinking that, well, this all sounds theoretical. Well, yes and no, right? So yes, I admit in a sense that this is an attempt to practicalize, right, the conceptuality of the term leadership. Right? We're trying to put leadership into a map, right? Put steps ascribing to them. So I admit that there will be generalization, right? Perhaps even overgeneralization, right? When it comes to specific situations that you and your organizations may be dealing with. But it does offer sort of practical usage and applications as well for looking at your people, right? Especially when it comes to their leadership and management development. Okay. For example, let me give you some examples here. Right? Burnout. Okay, if you look at employees burnout, now this is a situation that I've more and more come across in my coaching sessions, right, and corporate training rooms. In fact, a Gallup poll, right, a poll is done by the company Gallup. They polled 1,700 full-time employees, and the results of that poll show that a quarter of those employees admit to feeling burnout. Okay, now that's 1 out of 4 people of your employees who are admitting that they're feeling burnout. Not to mention that there are some that probably feeling burnout without admitting it or without knowing it. Right? So it is a significant issue, even more now than ever before. Okay. Now burnout is, last year in May 2019, in fact, the World Health Organization, right, WHO, officially recognized burnout as a work-related symptom. It's not a disease yet, but it's a symptom. It's already being recognized as not something just exists in your head, but it's actually a truly symptomatic. Right? And there's a book written, an Amazon bestseller. So sorry, the name of the author skipped me right now. Amy something, right? But the point is, it's the #1 bestseller. It talks about burnout, right? It's called Can't Even, right? Burnout amongst millennials. Okay, so that book specifically looked at the symptoms of burnout as you see millennials. Right, so what do you do when you see burnout, or what do I do when I see those my coaches with a symptom of burnout? Well, if we go back to the, right, if we're going back to the leadership energy journey map, right? Actually, the name came back to me now. It's by Ann Peterson. Okay, Ann Peterson, right? It's called Can't Even, right? How Millennials Became the Burnout Generation. Right? So if you want interested in burnout, you can look it up there. Anyway, right? So if you apply the leadership energy journey to this, right? Burnout is the case of kind of what I'm depicting on the screen here, right? This is a situation where people haven't built up enough potential, right? Or the energy to drive themselves forward. It's like a flat battery, basically. Right? So many of us grabbed the first job out of school. Okay? I'm one of them, right? And started working since. And our job became kind of like tomorrow, right? Tomorrow. Right? Especially if I may say Asian parents, right? I'm one myself, right? Asian parents, I'm generalizing here, of course, but Asian parents are kind of known or perceived to push children towards a certain career path, right? For what it returns, for what the path returns, rather than what it means to the child. Okay? So you're stuck with a journey that looks a little bit like what's on the screen here, right? So, and you can already see that when it comes to climbing that cliff, right? You see this cliff, right? Labeled here managerial skills that you have to scale, right? Many of these burnout managers, they face resistance from above, right? Or even from below, from their own team. And they simply don't have enough propulsion, right? Or they don't have enough momentum, right, to get themselves up those challenges. So I've coached many people, some as young as in their 20s, right, who are already feeling burnout at work. So how do you combat this? Well, I mean, the oversimplified answer, right, on the session is that you have to figure out how to put that hill, that first hill, back into, right, into your map. Right? So, you're rebuilding that potential. So you're going back and you talk to them about what it means, right? Talk about discovering who you are, right? Getting over the activation barriers and going down the energy flow. Okay. What else? What about a bad boss? Okay. A situation where a boss kind of, yell at you, right? Or kind of unleash at you for no reason, so you would think, right? In fact, bad bosses are not bad people, right? It's just, if superimpose them on this map, you would see that, bad boss would depict a situation similarly to this, which is, right, they've got huge build up of potentials, meaning that they want to see a better future, right? They're very energetic, they're very driven, right? Ambitious, you may even say that, right? They want to create that better future, but some of them may lack certain managerial skills. Okay, so that cliff now, right, disappeared, right? So you don't have that part, and then they don't have a way to deal with people effectively, to bring people along with them, right? And obviously the fix is kind of, you have to look at that element, and then you kind of see what are the supplementing skills that they would need. Okay, so you can see like having a map here kind of helps you to address the issue, right? Bad bosses are not bad people. It's just maybe sometimes they just lack certain managerial skills, and if you find a way to restore that, then then they can traverse the journey much like anybody else. Give you a couple more. Okay, this is also a situation that we face a lot in Asian companies, right? Employees don't speak up. Okay, and this particular symptom speaks specifically to the third step, right, in the journey, which is to cross the activation barrier. Right? Basically, when we're in a session, right, we talk about the fact that activation barrier, or in management terms, is the resistance, right, and challenges from others. It's part of your path towards leadership. Okay, so don't expect that if you choose the choice of leader and then people are just going to agree with you, right? If you must rely on the fact that you've built on who you are, built on your values and your purpose, right? And now you have that energy to push through these barriers, right? So in energy term, basically anything that could have happened would have already happened. So if you want to create something that isn't here yet, you're going to have to go through that activation barrier. It's not a resistance, in fact, it's actually a nature way of testing you to see if you're determined enough. Right? So that's how we use this third step. Okay. All right, last one, right? Feeling exhausted. Now, you may be thinking, well, how is that different from, burnout? Well, actually, it's quite different. Right? Burnout is when you don't have meaning in your job. Right? You can't even drag yourself out of bed on Monday. Right? Monday is the day that you dread. Right? Exhausted is when you come to Friday and you feel like I still have work on Saturday and Sunday and I really want to do them, but I'm just kind of don't have the energy anymore to do it, right? And some people may even feel ill because of that. You overworked, so to speak. So, where it's addressed on this journey is step 7, which is to replenish your energy. Right? And I know it's a simple thing to see, but you'll be amazed how many people I've worked with who have forgotten this fact that your energy is a finite resource, right? Your body is a finite resource, so you have to replenish it. You have to look at physical things like exercise, like sleeping, right? Giving yourself mindfulness, right? Also psychologically, to give you time to reflect and learn, right? And to have this step in there kind of serves the purpose of reminding leaders not to forget this very critical element, in order to keep you going into step 8, which is, what's next, and then keep that sustainable loop going. Right? We're sort of running short on time here, right? Like I said, it's on the journey itself, it's 8 steps. Technically, they're called mileposts, so it's not actually a step. It's kind of like play on word that it's a journey. So you kind of walking through the different mileposts as if you would be hiking, right? And it goes from start down all the way to what's next. Okay. The bad news is I don't think leadership energy journey is something that you kind of take a course and learn about it, and now that you learn the 8 steps, now you've got the skills to do them, right? It's kind of like the 8 step leading change by Carter, that it's not about knowing the 8 steps, it's about being able to do the 8 steps, right? And in a very similar analogy or manner, leadership energy journey is the same thing, right? So I wouldn't recommend this as something that you take a course for a couple of hours to learn what the steps stand for, and then you're all set, right? That's the bad news. But what's the good news? Well, the good news is you still can, right, experience the journey, right? So for example, what we do at ASB, right, is when we design our leadership development program, okay, the program itself, right, traverses this journey. Okay, without a lot of time, I don't even tell the people in the room that here's a journey, right? But I do use it as a framework, so to speak, right, to guide me in designing this program. So I'm showing you here one example. I kind of blur everything so you can't see because it's an actual, example of a design, right? But you see here that this design would constitute 4 different blocks, right? So you see the 4 modular blocks there with the little red caps, right? And you see the numbers above them, 1 through 8, right? And those numbers correspond to the 8 steps that we just walked through together a little bit in the session, right? So you go all the way from your people getting started, right? Right, being reminded whether or not they want to choose that choice of leadership, being reminded that it isn't born, it doesn't come with your title, right? It's a choice that you must make in order to create that better future. Right? And then you go through the process of discovering who you are all the way, step 5 and 6, you learn some managerial skills, right? Along the way, we also embed things like replenishing your energy and planning you for your next kind of aspiration as leaders as well, okay? So, right, it's you don't learn it as a knowledge, right? But you have to experience it in order to kind of transform you as a leader. Right? And that's what I'm trying to depict here on this particular slide. Right? So if this resonates with you, right, or if you're just curious to experience what it's like to kind of travel this leadership energy journey, well, give us a call. Okay, you know where to find us. We're right here in KL. Right? We can cater this experience specifically for your organization's needs. You can see on this slide, you see things like, in the bottom there, you can't see there, but those are competencies, leadership competencies that we also mandated to cover, right? And you see some in the blue bars there. That's some coaching, some personal executive coaching to facilitate the learning of leaders along the way. So we can cater these kind of experience specifically for your needs and to make it even more meaningful, more practical, right? And more value driven for your organization. Well, if it doesn't resonate with you, okay, or if you're skeptical whether or not does it really work, right? Well, again, simply give us a call, right, and give it a try. Okay, we also offer open enrollment program or public program where you can start with a few reps, right, from your organization to experiment. Okay. Anyway, either way, give us a call, right? That's my point here. All right, well, I think my time is up. I'm at the end of my time today. So hopefully this has given you a glimpse of what that leadership energy journey is about. It's taken me 15 years to put this together, so I didn't expect me to be able to cover it very clearly in 25 minutes. Right? But this is something that Iclif at ASB, right? If I may say so, we're sort of the pride of Malaysia, right? The pride of ASEAN, and even the pride of Asia. Right? Well, what we're doing, we're working towards contributing to the better future of developing, right, transformative, right, and principled leaders for not just this region, but for the world. Okay? So thank you very much. I hope to see you soon, right, whether in person or digitally. Have a great day.